Frog closure, or panko in Chinese, is a type of garment fastening that has been used in Chinese clothing for the past 1,000 years. Although it began as a purely functional element, over time it became highly decorative and elaborate. By the time of the Qipao in the 20th century, panko had already developed into a form of art in its own right. Oftentimes, it takes longer to make the buttons than to make the garment itself. Today, I'll be showing you how I made these butterfly-shaped frogs for my 1920s Qipao using the traditional method. Which means that our journey begins in a somewhat unusual place, the kitchen. The first step to making any type of panko is to prepare the wheat paste, which will later be applied to an entire piece of fabric. This is done by mixing flour with boiling hot water repeatedly until the flour is fully cooked and the paste reaches the right consistency. Every Qipao tailor has their own way of making wheat paste, so what I'm showing here is by no means the only way, or even the correct way. Essentially, what I'm doing here is I soak the flour in hot water for about a minute, pour off the water, stir the mixture, and then repeat the process for about 5 times. In the end, the wheat paste should look something like this. It should be smooth and glossy, with a texture similar to whipped cream. Panko can be made from many different kinds of fabric. What I'm using here is a very thin silk charmeuse, which is notoriously delicate and slippery to handle. This is where the wheat paste comes to the rescue. It stiffens the fabric and makes it much easier to fold into narrow tubes, while still preserving the lustrous sheen of the charmeuse. I'm using my trusted friend, the very historically accurate Gristedes Diamond Value Club card, to scoop up the wheat paste and spread it evenly across the full width of the fabric. Once the paste has been applied and dried, the silk charmeuse becomes as stiff as a piece of newspaper. Next, I'm going to give it a quick press with a low-heat iron, and then scrape it with a cling card, just to soften the fabric a little and make it nice and flat. Panko is made from very narrow tubes of fabric cut on the bias, in a way that's quite similar to how rouleau trim is made in Western historical clothing. I find it fascinating that even though the end products are completely different, panko and rouleau share so many similarities in how those fabric tubes are constructed. Depending on the thickness of the fabric, it can be folded in different ways to reach the ideal thickness. For this one, I folded the fabric in half, then folded each side inward by 1/3. This creates a narrow strip with 6 layers of fabric, which is then slip-stitched along the edge to form the thin tube, the foundation for making the panko. The word panko literally translates to knotted button in English, a very accurate description of how the closure is made. On the grand scale of Chinese knots, the panko knot is probably one of the simplest to make. But even so, it involves wrapping the fabric tube around your fingers in a rather intricate and quite ingenious way to achieve that perfect roundness. It's truly marvelous how the ancient Chinese figured out how to create such a delicate button knot using nothing more than a long fabric tube and a pair of dexterous hands. It feels almost surreal to be continuing this tradition with my own hands, knowing that someone was wrapping a piece of silk around their fingers in the exact same way over 1,000 years ago. At this point, the knot is still quite loose, So I use a pair of tweezers to gradually tighten it until the fabric tube is very tightly interlaced. The finished knot would measure about 6 to 7 millimeters in diameter. Once the knot is tight, I can move on to making the butterfly wings. After the wings are secured in place, I rolled the remaining fabric into 2 small decorative discs. The discs, like every other part of this frog button, are held in place by nothing more than the good old needle and thread. Which, in this case, means piercing through 48 layers of starched fabric. I must admit I have never been more grateful in my life for the invention of thimbles and tweezers. That's one half of the panko complete. The other half is essentially the same process, but replacing the button knot with a simple loop. And there you have it, a beautiful pair of butterfly-shaped panko. For my 1920s Qipao, I made 5 pairs of butterfly panko for the side closures, and slightly changed the design for the closures at the dajing and the collar, which is a common practice for Qipao design. In my next video, I'll take you through the full process of making this Qipao, so be sure to follow my channel and join me for the next adventure.